guys, this is Eve West. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. This is part 2, if you will, of my last video. It kind of got cut short abruptly. I apologize for that. I kind of ran out of memory, if you will, on my phone. But my last video, part 1, really dealt a lot with the Bible. And really talking about psychological splits with the Bible, and I want to kind of tie that into A Course in Miracles. My channel overall is dedicated to promoting a book I wrote. It's called Follow. It's an ebook. You can find it on Amazon.com. And if you watch many of my other videos, I pretty much explain what it is. And you know, my first video, part 1 to this video, will really tell you about what Follow is about. But I really want to get into A Course in Miracles now, because I've really given you some scripture, if you will, concerning, you know, Monarch programming and how all of the various constructs of the matrix, including our religions, have contradictions within them that causes psychological splitting. And so people don't really necessarily think of the Bible as Monarch programming or having Monarch programming. But clearly, I've read you so many different contradictions within the Bible that there really is no, really, to be honest with you, there is no way that you can say there aren't contradictions here, you know. And so I really wanted, you know, Christians, especially preachers, people like that, if you know a preacher, please send them this video for my part 1. So they can actually explain these things to me, because I cannot find anyone really who has the courage to speak to me. You know, and that's fear, you know. As a God in this world, I would rather you respect me than fear me. I would rather you respect me. But the God that actually orchestrates this world, he would rather you fear him than respect him. He rules by fear. So I want to invert that, because everything here is an inversion. So I would rather you, you know, respect me, not fear me, and have the courage to actually, you know, comment. You know, you can comment on what I say or how I say things or how I look superficially, but I really want you to look at the content and all the things that I have said to you, right? And why do we have these contradictions? If you can't actually explain that to me, and you are, you know, a Christian or say a preacher or something like that, that's very telling. That's very telling. And I really don't think that I'm going to get anyone that's going to explain these things to me. It will be very interesting to see if anyone explains it. And really, to be honest with you, this even gives more validity to the notion that the information that I present on here is occult information. It's not things that you're supposed to know. It's things that is filtered out. It's things that, you know, the masses aren't supposed to really touch upon. That's what it's about. And so, you know, when I look at Deuteronomy 28:30, how it says, you know, basically the Lord says that if you don't, what you call it? Oh, I apologize for that, guys. But if you don't do what I say, all right, follow my commandments, I'm going to cause somebody else to sleep with your wife. Is there a Christian or a preacher, or anybody, even not even a Christian, let's say if you just study theology, can you explain this to me? Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Anybody? No? Oh, what a pity. What about Exodus chapter 20:14? Thou shalt not commit adultery. So I'm sure, you know, people can explain that. But Deuteronomy 28:30, right? That's that duality, that Freemason checkerboard, white, then black part of the checkerboard floor. So I want to show you, this is the reason why I'm gang stalked in front of the library. I know that from a literal reptilian brain sense, there's no connection. It just looks like, oh, you know, someone just, you know, was just picking on you, and that happens to people all the time, right? Yeah. But the reason why I'm being picked on has nothing to do with anything superficial. It has everything to do with the spiritual. It has everything to do with the fact that you cannot explain Deuteronomy 28:30 to me. It has everything to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that you cannot explain the contradiction between Deuteronomy 28:30 and Exodus chapter 20:14, which is thou shalt not commit adultery. Why would the Lord have somebody else lay with your wife? Does that make any common sense? And why would there be a contradiction? If you go into the book of Romans, it talks about, and I really do want to touch on this. I'm going to look for it and bring it up really quickly because I wasn't planning on doing it. But I do feel that it's fitting here since we're talking about Deuteronomy 28:30. And so in Deuteronomy 28:30, or I should say Exodus 20:14. I apologize. I have to get things right nowadays. So in Exodus chapter 20:14, that says, thou shalt not commit adultery. That's a part of the 10 Commandments. However, when we look at certain scriptures, like in Romans, it talks about how the law and the commandments create all types of what they call concupiscence within your being. And concupiscence deals with the kundalini, believe it or not, because the kundalini is described as a very sexual energy. And so when you see concupiscence, you think of concubine, and so you think of sex. And so concupiscence is like strong sexual desire, if you will, because your will is connected to your genitals. It's connected to your genitals. And so since it's connected to your genitals, right, your will, because that chakra system is around there, and your will is taken away from you, it comes back as sexual disgust. And so it talks about that in the book of Romans. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Let me do a search really quick. Replace Romans. So bear with me, guys. But it talks about, I think it's Romans chapter 7. Yeah, this is it. Okay. So this is Romans, I want to say it's chapter 7, but I may be mistaken. But I will double check that for you. It says, but sin taking occasion by the commandment wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. For without the law sin was dead. For I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. and the commandment which was ordered to life, which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death. For sin taking occasion by the commandment deceived me, and by it slew me. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just and good. And so it really just talks about how, the commandment rots in you all concupiscence, because the commandment takes away your will. I mean, think about free will, If I'm the Lord, right? Let's say, hypothetically speaking, I'm the Lord. And I say to you, if you don't obey my commandments, I'm going to have somebody else sleep with your wife. Is that free will? If you look at Deuteronomy, it really talks about how if you don't obey the Lord, then, he's going to allow all these nations to, basically rise up against you. And he says that you will eat your children. I'm telling you, this stuff is in there. That you will resort to cannibalism if you don't obey his commandments, that, you will actually resort to cannibalism and eat your children if you don't obey my law, because nations will come upon you. I'm going to allow you to fall sick and that type of thing. It's really, Deuteronomy 20 sounds very interesting. Sounds very interesting, Is that free will? You know, I'm gonna cause you to get sick, and you know, you're gonna eat your kids, and I'm gonna cause somebody else to lay with your wife, and you know, I'm gonna take away your flocks and stuff like that, and all your livelihood. Is that really free will? Do you really have free will when someone tells you all of that? Interesting. It's funny because, you know, the people that control this domain, if you will, I call them the lords of karma. It's very interesting how they work, you know, because like say if I were crossing the street and then a car comes dotting down the road, you know, I would, you know, what would you do? Let's see what you would do. If you saw a car coming down, you're crossing the street and all of a sudden the car starts darting down the road, what would be your first decision? Would you just stay there, or would you run across the street or run back? You would likely run across the street or run back, right? Was that a conscious choice? Did you make a conscious choice to do that? Was that free will? Let's take away that question, conscious choice. Was it free will? Did you have free will in doing that? Well, from my standpoint, I would say no, you don't have free will. Because you say to yourself, you know what, if I don't run across the street or run back, then I'm going to get hit by that car. If I get hit by that car, then I could potentially die. Or if I get hit by that car, I'll get injured, and then I'll have to go to the hospital, and then I can't go to work, right? And I can't take care of my family and this and the other. And so all of that reptilian brain fear that's programmed into you, right, takes away your free will. The body takes away your free will because you're all about preserving the body. You're all about preserving the body. And so they would say, well, you had free will, you know, but because you're in the body, that's not free will. You know, you're about protecting the body. When you're in the sarcophagus or the cot, if you will, of the body, you're doing everything to survive. That's what the body does. It's about survival. Is that free will? Saying that I'm going to have somebody else sleep with your wife if you don't obey my commandments. Is that free will? I'm going to cause, you know, sickness to fall upon you if you don't obey my commandments. Is that free will? Do you really have a choice then? Think about that. Because, you know, one thing about this realm is about judgment. And judgment is tied to free will, believing that you have free will. And so when these things happen, let's think about society itself. Do you really have free will within society? Do you really have a decision about what you say and do and think? Come on now. Do you really make a decision? Or is that decision really made for you? Because you know the consequences that are going to be placed upon you if you don't think a certain way, if you don't do a certain thing, if you don't feel a certain way, or if you don't deny your feelings. Where are we? So, I really like to point out those contradictions, if you will, there in the Bible, and really tie this into A Course in Miracles. Because, you know, like I said, many people do not associate the Bible with monarch programming. Remember, King James of Scotland is a king. He is a monarch, okay? And so he's responsible for putting together the King James Version of the Bible, okay? And so, and looking at all these contradictions that I explained, and if you haven't seen part 1, please do look at that. There are countless contradictions, and I'm very curious to see if there are any Christians or preachers, you know, or theologians, if you will, that will really address the contradictions that I propose. But in getting away from that, let's tie this into the Course in Miracles and also just the matrix reality itself. So I've given you a bunch of contradictions about the Bible, right? I kind of touched a little bit on A Course in Miracles and how it pertains to dissociating. The matrix environment is designed to split your mind, to indulge or cultivate a desire for something, but prevents you from grounding those desires into physical reality, because there's a you that you go to sleep to at night that experiences it. It's called the unconscious mind, okay? Or Adam in Christian theology, or Ra. if you will, in Egyptian mythology. Okay? And so when you go to sleep at night, right? Say you saw a commercial, well, say before you went to sleep, you saw a commercial about a Range Rover, and you're like, I really want that Range Rover. That's a really nice car. But your solar plexus has been taken away from you. Okay? It's been rotted out. Your kundalini, as they call it, gone. They just chopped off your penis and they threw it away when you came into this reality. So you don't have the masculine. You don't have a penis. Okay? And so you don't really have the time or money, going back to Saturn, which is allegorically depicted as Satan in the Bible. Okay? You don't have the ability to manifest that Range Rover. But you really want it. So this is desire, and so your astral self will cultivate a desire for something that it wants from you in the astral realm. So it uses the ego as a slave. So the astral self is like, I want a Range Rover. So it'll cultivate that desire and show you, in commercials, you'll see that Range Rover, you'll, see this, that, and the other. And you have access to that on the astral realm, okay? So the ego is really a slave, and so it splits you off. Your astral self is God, and it splits you off. And so your ability to manifest is taken away. And so you become like a beta slave, if you will. Okay? Like a bobblehead doll, if you will. Now, how does that tie into A Course in Miracles? Well, in the Bible. Well, in the Bible, I talked about how it splits you off because there's major contradictions in the Bible between light and dark. In the Bible, we see Jesus is two different people. At one point, he's talking about, I didn't come here to bring peace but a sword. I'm here for justice. But then he's saying, I'm the Prince of Peace. This says that he's the Prince of Peace. You can't say, I'm not here for peace, and then say, I'm the Prince of Peace. You can't say, obey your earthly masters as you would obey Christ, and then say, you can't obey two masters. You can't say, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, and then say, if you love the world, the love of the Father is not in you, or if you're an adulterer or an adulteress, if your friendship with the world is enmity with God. Why all these contradictions? Just like the Matrix environment, there's contradictions. Don't be a whore, but look at this Reese's chocolate bunny commercial that talks about getting it on. Don't be angry, but let's watch this TV show with all this killing and murder in it. Let's play video games. We can murder people for hours, right? Don't be vain, right? Vanity, that's a big one, right? In this Matrix reality. Don't be vain. Oh my gosh, when you go to that interview for your job, make sure that your hair looks nice and make sure that you wear something appropriate, something black or navy, right? Make sure that you, when you go to that party, that you have the flyest stuff on and what have you. Let's go to the mall and get something nice, right? That's vanity. But you're told not to be vain. That's a 7 deadly sin. This is a psychological split. And so our religions are no different than the other constructs of the Matrix that causes mind splitting. And so when you read the Bible, you see there are contradictions and it creates mind splits. Otherwise, it wouldn't tell you to obey your earthly masters like Christ and then say, well, you can't obey two masters. It doesn't make any sense to me, but if it makes sense to you, please do explain. Because I'm all about being enlightened in this incarnation so I don't have to come back to this hellhole. Amen. So anywho, let's get into A Course in Miracles now. Okay? Because this has a lot of triggers for me because like I said, A Course in Miracles drove me insane. So, and I was talking about my last video how A Course in Miracles causes dissociation. And looking at the first lesson, it says, nothing I see in this room or in the street, on this street, from this window in this place means anything. And so it's telling you to say these things to yourself, such as this table does not mean anything, this chair does not mean anything, this hand does not mean anything, this foot does not mean anything, this pen does not mean anything, this door does not mean anything, that body does not mean anything, that lamp does not mean anything, that sign does not mean anything, that shadow does not mean anything. And so really in A Course in Miracles, it's really showing you, it's really making you dissociate. And so when we get into Monarch programming, MK Ultra, it talks about dissociative personalities. If somebody tells you that door doesn't mean anything, right? You really believe that, and you kick down a door, like say if you go in a public place and you kick down a door, and you've been doing A Course in Miracles, it says that that door doesn't mean anything. Will you get arrested? Somebody answer that question for me. Is that true? It says that body doesn't mean anything, right? So if you tick me off or whatever, right? If you tick me off and, you know, I push you, right? Your body doesn't mean anything, right? That's what it says in the Course in Miracles. That body doesn't even associate you as a person. You're not Jim Bob. You're just that body. You're nobody, right? That's what it's saying. That's what it's saying, that body. I don't even see you as a person. That's what it's telling me to do. That body does not mean anything. What are you really doing to people when you're giving them this type of doctrine? Now, all the people that actually wrote good reviews about A Course in Miracles, please enlighten me. Because it says right here that that body, that lamp, that sign, that shadow, that's dissociation. It didn't say that stop sign. It says that sign. So it's really trying to erase, if you will, the significance of the atomic. Trying to erase any type of connection or attachment that you would have. Now imagine someone who, you know, does not have the pineal capacity to really see the insidious nature behind this doctrine. You know, you don't know any better, but someone is giving you this and saying, that body doesn't mean anything. I'm sorry. This is your first lesson. So let me tell you something now. I know the argument's going to be, well, A Course in Miracles tells you to love your brothers and so forth. But A Course in Miracles, I want to say this is even some of the teachers of A Course in Miracles, many of them have said to skip the doctrine and just go straight to the lessons. Yes, they have, because I have done A Course in Miracles. And I have researched it. And many people just do the workbook. So it can advocate all day or what have you that, you know, love your brother and so forth and this, that, and the other. But if you're advocated to go ahead and do the lessons and even skip the workbook, I mean, not the workbook, but skip the lessons, the commentary before the workbook, and yes, they do say, they do advocate that in some cases, you're going to just say, well, that body doesn't mean anything. So who cares about it? You're not even a person to me. You're just a body. That's crazy. That's insane. That's dissociation. Saying that things don't mean anything. But then in the contrary, in the matrix environment, things do mean something. That body does mean something. That sign, stop sign, when I'm driving down the road, it does mean something. So these are two contradictions that are being fed within the consciousness, okay? And so I want you to know the insidious nature of dissociation when it comes to A Course in Miracles. And also, A Course in Miracles does tell you that people are not real. What if I was going for a psychological evaluation, right? And I said, people aren't real. It's like people are like toys. They don't exist really. There's only one Son of God that existing here. If I go to a psychiatric ward, do you think that they would think I'm crazy? Now, these are psychologists that made this course. These are psychologists. So if I go to a psychiatric ward and I say, well, you know what? That body doesn't mean anything. This world doesn't really exist. It's not real. What do you think they're going to do to me? Do you think they'll probably commit me? Probably so. But anywho, let's keep going. And so let's look at not just the dissociating aspect of A Course in Miracles, but let's look at how it correlates to the Bible when it comes to contradictions. And so in A Course in Miracles, it tells you that you're not responsible for your thoughts, really. That God is responsible for thought. Despite that, it really convicts you a lot about your thought. It convicts you and it tells you that you're responsible. Well, really, although it says you're not responsible, the rhetoric actually infers that you are responsible. But just reading you an excerpt here, it says, only what God creates is reversible and unchangeable. Okay? What you made can always be changed, because when you do not think like God, you are not really thinking at all. Okay? So it's saying that you're not thinking like God, you're not really thinking at all. Delusional ideas are not real thoughts, although you can believe in them. Okay? So it says you can believe in delusional thoughts, ideas, although they're not real. But you are wrong. Okay? It says the function of thought comes from God and is in God. Alright? The function of thought comes from who? God, and is in God. As part of his thought, you cannot think apart from him. It just said that. So let me go back here, because we're going to look and really decipher A Course in Miracles. It says here, when you do not think like God, you are not really thinking at all. So it's saying, implying that, you know, you can think, but not like God. That's what it's saying. Let me read that again. When you do not think like God, you are not really thinking at all. So it's saying that, hey, you can think apart from God, but that's not really thinking at all. That's what it's saying. Now let's look here. It says that the function of thought comes from God and is in God. As part of his thought, you cannot think apart from him. So how are you saying that I cannot think apart from him, but it says that I can have delusional ideas? And, you know, when I don't think like God, then I'm not thinking at all. That makes no common sense. That makes no common sense. How can I have a delusional idea about something when you said that, you know, I can't think apart from God? Contradictions within the same thing. And so this is what drove me crazy. Because within the same paragraph, I'm told one thing that contradicts another thing. And so really, A Course in Miracles is like a child who's been put into a room. And the child is like, you know, there's a doctor. Okay, there's a doctor in the room. And so the doctor says, put this square into this circle. And so the kid is there and is like, you know, because the kid doesn't know any better. So the kid is like, oh, okay. You know, trying to put this square into the circle. We know, right? The people watching it, right? They know that you can't put a square into a circle. But the doctor says, put that square into that circle. And the kid doesn't know any better, right? And the doctor tells the kid, in order for you to get out of this room, this white room, you have to put that square into that circle. This is sick, okay? So the kid is like, you know, really trying to make it fit, and it just won't fit. Okay? And so, not only, you know, is the child told by the doctor, you can't get out of this room until you put that square into that circle. But say the doctor unleashes certain torture instruments upon that child. So say electric shock treatments, let's say sensory overstimulation, let's say electromagnetic torture, or no-touch torture as they call it, all these various things. Okay, put that square into that circle, zap. Put that square into that circle, zap, zap, zap. Put that square into that circle. What do you think is going to happen? That child is going to go insane. Because you are asking a child to do something that is impossible to do. Okay? It's impossible. And then, on top of it being impossible, you're actually interjecting horrible torture instruments to get the child to do something that they cannot do. I would equate that scenario to my experience with A Course in Miracles. And let's see how. So, let's go back again. It says, when you do not think like God, you are not really thinking at all. Delusional ideas are not real thoughts. But then it says, the function of thought comes from God and is in God. As part of his thought, you cannot think apart from him. You just said that I can have delusional ideas and not think like God. But okay, contradiction here. Square and circles. So let's keep moving further. As part of his thought, you cannot think apart from him. Irrational thought is disordered thought. Irrational thought is disordered thought. You just said that these aren't real thoughts, that you can't think apart from God, and that delusional thoughts are not real thoughts, but you're calling it a thought here. Irrational thought is disordered thought. Contradictions. God himself orders your thought because your thought was created by him. Let's look at that. Your thought was created by God. That's what it's saying. But then it's saying here, when you do not think like God, you are not really thinking at all. How can I not think like God when you said that God orders my thought and I can't think apart from him? Do you think that this is a doctrine that's made to give you the truth? With all this confusing language here? This is square and circles. Put that square in that circle, babe. Put that square in that circle. Put the square in the circle. Zap. Put that square in that circle. Gang stalking. Put that square in that circle. No touch torture, electromagnetic torture. Put that square in that circle. Come on now. Let's look at this. Let's look at it. It's chess, it's not checkers. So let's move on. So God himself orders your thought because your thought was created by him. Guilt feelings are always a sign that you do not know this. Key here. Guilt feelings are always a sign that you do not know this. And so here, it is proposing guilt. Because you're going to feel guilty because it says, well, you can't think apart from God. Alright? But here, you are having guilty feelings because the thoughts that you're having are not of God. It's saying that when you do not think like God, you're not thinking at all. Okay? But you're saying that irrational thought is disordered thought. Thought is thinking. And so you're going to feel guilty. Because it says guilt feelings are always a sign that you do not know this. That your thought is not separate from God. But it just said that you can have delusional ideas or delusional thoughts. Makes no sense. And so they also show you believe you can think apart from God and want to. Every disordered thought is attained or attended by guilt. Okay? At its inception and maintained by guilt in its continuance. Guilt is inescapable by those who believe they order their own thoughts. Guilt is inescapable by those who believe they ordered their own thoughts and must therefore obey their dictates. Okay? So it's telling you that if you think that you order your own thoughts, you're going to be guilty. Alright? You're going to be guilt results if you think you order your own thoughts. But if you don't order your own thoughts, why would you feel guilty if God orders them? Okay? I really need our third eye people to work here. Okay? Reptilian brains, you know, I'm not trying to throw off on anyone, but reptilian brains are not going to catch this. My 5-finger people, I need 6-finger people here. Okay? When I was little, they cut off one of my fingers. I had 6 fingers on each hand. They cut one off of each hand. So I need my 6 fingers. I need my mutants. I need my truthers. I need my Wonder Women. Okay? X-Men. I need my Christ men. Xmas, Christmas, X-Men. I need Christ. I need someone who is not just reptilian here. It says, guilt is inescapable by those who believe they order their own thoughts and must therefore obey their dictates. So it's saying that, you know, you're going to feel guilty if you think that you order your own thought, because you don't. But then it says that delusional thoughts are not real, although you can believe in them. So here, you know, if God orders your thought, then these delusional thoughts must be ordered by him. Because it tells you, it says right here that the function of thought comes from God and is in God. As part of his thought, you cannot think apart from God, from him. So since you can't think apart from God, because he orders your thought, how is it that you can experience guilt? It says guilt is inescapable by those who believe they order their own thoughts. Why would you feel guilty about your thought? If God orders your thought, he's responsible for the metaphysics. So why would you feel bad about it when you know he's responsible for it? And since he's responsible for thought, then must he also be responsible for the atomic level, the manifestation? Before anything can be done, a decision can be made in the physical. Doesn't it come from a thought, the metaphysics? Everything in the metaphysics, right? Whatever thought, right? Good or bad. It says that, let me read it again. The function of thought comes from God and is in God. As part of his thought, you cannot think apart from him. You can't think apart from God. Good thought, bad thought. Right brain, left brain. Thought. Doesn't matter whether it's good or bad, left or right, up or down, male, female, whatever it is. It all comes from who? Who orders the thought? According to A Course in Miracles, God does. He orders the thought. So since he orders your thought, right? How is it they're saying that because if you feel that you ordered the thought, then guilt will arise within you. But how can you have a guilty thought when God is the one who orders it? What does that say about God? He's responsible for thought. So say if I have a good thought, right? I'm like, oh, you know, I have a thought to, I don't know, what's a good thought? What's a really good thought? You know, I have a thought to, you know, go feed some people at a homeless shelter, right? That's a thought, right? God ordered that thought, right? He ordered that thought. And in ordering that thought, I can't take responsibility. I don't feel guilty for it. It's good anyway, but, you know, I don't feel any responsibility for it because thought is in God. You cannot think apart from him. He's the one. God, it says the function of thought comes from God. But what if I have a thought, hypothetically speaking, not me, but let me just say, you know, for the sake of explaining, a bad thought. And the bad thought is, you know, someone may have a bad thought to say, kill the people at the homeless shelter or something, or maybe poison the people at the homeless shelter. Say that's a bad thought, right? It says right here, the function of thought comes from God and is in God. So, what is that saying if you have a bad thought? It's saying that it comes from God. So if the thought is, you know, one thought is go feed the people at the homeless shelter so they can have food, right? That's God's thought, right? He orders thought, which is considered good. But say there's another thought that says, you know, when you go feed the homeless people at the homeless shelter, put some poison in their food or something like that. That's also God, because God ordered the thought. If I feel guilty or responsible for any one of them, that would be irresponsible according to A Course in Miracles, because God orders your thought and you cannot think independent of him. So why would you feel guilty if thought comes from God? That doesn't make any common sense. It's telling you that thought comes from God. What is that saying about God? What is the Course in Miracles not saying about who God is? Remember, when your third eye open, it's not about what is said. It is about what is not said. It's the one who creeps in corridors and doesn't make a sound. You're not dealing with the atomic level anymore. You're dealing with the metaphysics. You're dealing with energy. You're dealing with the people you can't see. What is the A Course in Miracles not saying? Saying, but not saying. Okay? All right. So let's move on. So, when you get further and further into A Course in Miracles, you see that there are different contradictions. And I'm not going to be too long here, but for example, you think about rules for decisions, okay? You can't really decide to do something at the atomic level without it first being in the metaphysics, right? Everything that's done comes from a thought. Now, it says that thoughts are not independent of God, okay? And so within this lesson, it says, today I will make no decisions by myself. Okay, that's the whole thing. I will make no decisions by myself. If I make no decisions by myself, it says this day that will be given to me. This is a day that will be given to me. So what does that mean? If it says if you don't make any decisions by yourself, then you'll be given a day that you want. In this particular lesson, if you will, it says that you should think about the day that you want to have, right? To me, that's your own thinking. That's your own will, right? It doesn't say think about the day that God wants you to have. It says think about the day that you would want to have. That is what the lesson is saying in terms of rules for decisions. And so, it's saying that if you don't make a decision by yourself, then you have the day that you want, okay? And so the instructions said to think of the day you want to have. This perpetuates guilt because it's saying I didn't have the good day I wanted because I made a decision by myself. And so, when the Course is telling you to, say today I want to, take my daughter to the water park or something like that. And, maybe go out to get something to eat afterward and, read her a book read her a book before she goes to bed at night or something like that. Or what have you. That is like the type of day that you want. And so it's telling you that if you don't make a decision, if you make no decisions by yourself, if you make decisions by yourself, then your day will not go the way that you want it to. Okay? So think about that. Think about that psychologically. Think about that from a mundane level. I told you what I wanted my day to be. I wanted to take my kid to the water park, have lunch with her, take her home and read her a good book before she goes to bed and so forth. That's what I wanted. However, the Course is telling me that if I make no decisions by myself, then I'll have that day. But if I make decisions by myself, then I won't have that day. So imagine that doesn't go. Let's say I get up in the morning and have every intention of taking my daughter to, to the water park, but I get into a really bad car accident, okay? Does that mean that I made a decision by myself? Is that why I got into a car accident and I can't go to the water park? Let's think about this in a very mundane way, because I really want you to get into the psychology of A Course in Miracles, okay? Because one thing about these principles, they are asking you to apply these principles to everyday things, okay? So, if I make no decision by myself, this is the day that will be given me. I want to go to the water park, take my kids to the water park, have fun, go to lunch, right? Car accident. What does A Course in Miracles person think? Tell me. I made a decision by myself. Since I made a decision by myself, I did not get the day that I wanted. It's so funny. The person that, I think he helped to edit A Course in Miracles. What is his name? Ken Wapnick? It's funny. One of the videos I saw him talking to his students, he told his students, if you want to learn A Course in Miracles, don't ask a Course in Miracles student. He said that they're basically crazy. This is someone who edited A Course in Miracles. He says A Course in Miracles people are crazy Like, they'll come to a funeral and bring balloons and stuff like that. And champagne and things like that. He mentioned something like that in one of his seminars. You know what he really was talking about? When my third eye, my mind's eye says? A birthday. That's reincarnation. You bring balloons and champagne and stuff like that to a birthday and you get reincarnated and your mind gets wiped. And you sell your soul out for money, for cake. Okay? That's what he was really talking about. He wasn't really talking about a funeral. He was talking about a birthday. That's what he was talking about. And so you have even Ken Wapnick telling you, the people who are course students go crazy. He is literally telling you this. How is it that A Course in Miracles has 93% of people saying, oh, this is a wonderful book. I'm trying to figure this out. This is out of the mouth of Ken Wapnick. I'm not lying. Go look up his video. You will find it there. Don't ask a course student. Why is it that your course students, you shouldn't ask a course student about A Course in Miracles? Does that make any logical common sense? Could that be why I actually had a nervous breakdown after doing A Course in Miracles? Potentially. All right, so let's move on. So, you asked a question by yourself and you said an answer in your terms for your day to not go as you wish. And so, basically, it's telling you that you're not going to have the days you want if you made a decision by yourself and you didn't make a decision basically to think with God. And so think to yourself, someone who's driving along to, to the water park or what have you with their kid, and you get into a car accident, and God forbid the kid, God forbid that the kid actually died in the car accident. What would that do to you? Think about this. I really want people to hear me. And I really want my course people to really respond to this one. If you know any people who do the course, please share. But let's say, for example, if I'm in the car with my daughter, right? God forbid, but let's just say scenario-wise. And my daughter, something happens to my kid. Okay? That she gets seriously injured or potentially dies. Or someone else is in the car and she potentially dies. And they potentially die. Am I supposed to believe that because I made a decision by myself, that that's why this consequence happened? That that's why my day did not go the way that I wished it to go? But God's son is supposed to be guiltless, not here. God's son is guilty. Your day would have went better, or the way that you wanted it, if you did not make a decision by yourself. But you made a decision by yourself. So guess what? Instead of having that day at the water park with your daughter and going to lunch afterward and then reading a book to her before bed, guess what? Guilt, guilt, guilt. The guilt meter goes off. You didn't make a decision with God. You made a decision by yourself. And so guess what? You're the reason why your daughter got, something happened to your daughter. You're the reason why something happened to the people that were in your car, or whatever the case is. Do you see the insidious nature behind this? It is not the things that are said. It is the things that are not said. It is the things that are not said. This is in no way throwing off on people who do the course. But this is black and white. This is black and white. This is not... What I'm telling you is here. You can look it up for yourself. Rules for decisions. This is what it's saying. But, maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. If I am, please enlighten me and tell me where I got it wrong. Because I'm reading your doctrine. And going further, really, to be honest with you, I don't have to go any further. But there's just so much of it. But it just said to make a judgment in your terms by determining the day you want. It didn't say what day would God want for you. It asked you what day you want. Okay, so that's another thing that I want to point out here. It's saying that you made a decision by yourself. But here it's saying that for you to say, what type of day you want. That's a decision by yourself. It didn't ask you to think, to yourself, what type of day do you think God would want you to have? It's saying, what do you want to accomplish today? What type of day do you want to have? Again, this is your terms. Then it makes you feel guilty for, you know, for trying to have something that it asks you to have on your terms. You know, I mean, it's just very insidious. Also, too, I'm not exactly sure if this is true or not. I'm going to do more research on it. But it says that Helen Schuckman, the person that scribed A Course in Miracles, that she said was Jesus, right? And we know Jesus didn't, you know, the letter J didn't exist during the time that Jesus would have walked the earth. Jesus, okay? So she said this was Jesus talking to her. She didn't want to be known. It's written in certain places that she didn't want to be known that she was the one who wrote A Course in Miracles until she was dead. Why? I mean, if I write a book, you know, why would I not want anybody to know I wrote it until I died? Does that make any sense? I'm just saying, it sounds a little different to me. So, let me see if I want to point anything else out here. Also, it says something here. I want to say it says you cannot be in conflict when you ask for what you want. You know, if you're asking for what you want, that doesn't coincide with what God wants. And so if you ask for what you want, then that's actually, you know, really making decisions by yourself and not making decisions with Him. That contradicts what it says here. It says too, you cannot make decisions by yourself. Yet it told you to decide yourself what kind of day that you want. Yeah, it really is saying here that you can't make decisions by yourself. There's another part that says that you cannot make decisions independent of Him. Let me see. Okay. It says basically there's no freedom from what must occur. And if you feel that way, it must be wrong. Let's look at this now. There's no freedom from what must occur. And if you feel that way, it must be wrong. Well, why are you saying there's no freedom from what must occur? But you said that if I think by myself, then my day will not go the way that I want. But if I think with Him, then my day will actually go with what I want, right? If I think with God. But then it says there is no freedom from what must occur. If there's no freedom from what must occur and it's going to occur the way that it's supposed to, is like fate or something like that, then that makes no common sense. Why make a decision if there's no freedom from what must occur? That's like going to the Akashic record. Like the Akashic record is all thoughts, actions, and emotions that someone has to go through. But here it's saying there's no freedom from what must occur. Well, you're saying that the Akashic record is real basically here. But then you said to make a decision with God. And if you don't make a decision with God, then guilt and all of this stuff and fear, you know, accrues because you're not thinking with Him. That does not mean there is no freedom for what must occur. It seems like you have free will, but then it says you don't have free will, basically. Come on. Is that why Ken Wapnick said that the people, the Course in Miracles students that he had were a little, you know, could be. So it continues to ask, what day would you decide to have? All right. So it's talking about you deciding, you know, what day you want to have. But then again, it says, oh, you know, don't make decisions by yourself. This is contradictory. Everything within A Course in Miracles, according to my assessment, or the things that, I shouldn't say everything. The things that I pointed out to you are contradictions within A Course in Miracles. Okay. It said that, you know, God's Son is guilty, but it's telling you here that if you don't make decisions with God, then your day's going to be messed up. However, it says that, you know what, there's no freedom from what must occur. You know, it says God orders your thought. However, if you don't think with God, guilt accrues. You don't make decisions with him. I mean, there's just so many different contradictions throughout. You know, I can see, you know, based upon my assessment why, you know, Helen Schuckman did not want to be alive when this